The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of The Gloves Are Off. I'm Moses Woldu. We got a great show for you. Lots to talk about. Of course, hockey's back. NFL playoffs, the Super Bowl teams are set, and we'll get to those in a second. First, I'm going to introduce my co-host, Greg Buchanan, a CPCA radio announcer, as well as the GM for the Lloydminster Bandits. How are you?
Not too bad, Moses. Not too bad.
Excellent. And I'm pleased to be joined by Rod Kirby, the Lloydminster Minor Football Association president. Of course, you got a big AGM tonight, too, as well.
You bet. Yep. Thanks for having me here.
All right. Excellent. Well, we'll start off with football and what two games we had. The divisional games were fantastic. Then it just kind of led up to the championship games. You had the Baltimore Ravens and the New England Patriots. Both these teams met last year, came down to a field goal miss, and obviously that disappointed a lot of Ravens fans. But you look at it this year, they were down at half, 13-7. Miscue really at the last play by the New England Patriots. Then all of a sudden a few changes were made. Flacco started throwing the ball a little bit more, and they started to have success. And Flacco has done a fantastic job, and this is a thing that has kind of riddled him throughout his career so far. He's been a so-so quarterback during the regular season, but when it comes to playoff time, he's been in the playoffs each of his 5 years. He's won at least one playoff game in that time. He's done a great job managing the game, and is showing this year that, you know what, he could take that next step. Is he now, or can he be, an elite quarterback?
I don't think you're ever an elite quarterback until you win the big game. You know, and I think if he, in 2 weeks' time, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, whenever, how long we have a break for the Super Bowl, it seems like it's forever until we get to play the game again. But I think until you win that elite game, you know, a little Peyton Manning's, or actually Eli Manning's example of that, until you win that elite game, that big game, you're not an elite quarterback.
I would say Dan Marino would be considered an elite
quarterback,
but he didn't
that's
win.
The one exception.
That's the one exception.
Oh, okay.
There's a few exceptions out there.
I'm not trying to compare the two. By no means is Flacco a Marino. But you look at what he's done, especially these playoffs, 8 touchdown passes, no interceptions. Yeah,
no, he's been really good this year. He had a good season. I think it's his highest yard total to this date in his career. But like Greg said, I agree, unless you win that big game, you're not an elite quarterback. He's good, but he can't be mentioned in the same breath as the Mannings. Breeze, Rodgers, on and on. You can't until you win that big game. So maybe he'll win that big game in 2 weeks, and then you can start talking like that. I think the offense hasn't been conducive to him becoming an elite quarterback over the years. I think they don't take the chances enough, but you can see that they are doing that now. In the playoffs especially, he's taken that chance. And I think he's starting to learn how to throw, let his receiver go up and get the ball, where in the past he never ever did that. And that's going to be part of what's going to make him an elite quarterback.
And one of the things is about Flacco, too, as well. If you look at the time that he spent, you had that defense that's done so well for the last decade and a half, that the quarterback position is one that they've kind of lacked in, and that's never really got them to that next step. Of course, when they made it and won the Super Bowl back, was it 99, 2000 or so? 2000, I think. Yeah, they had Trent Dilfer who managed the game. They have a guy who does that now, but is actually better, in my opinion, than Dilfer. But let's talk about the Niners and Falcons. This was a game that was very interesting. Falcons, all season they've done this. They even did it in the divisional game, up by big points, end up losing it in the end. But where does the credit go? Do you credit the Niners for coming back from 17-0 down, or do you blame the Falcons for not stopping Kaepernick and Gore when they needed to?
I think it's a combination of both. I think the previous week they almost blew against Seattle. They should have, and for some reason Seattle wasn't able to hold on, and Atlanta came back. But a combination of both. San Francisco did come back, and where's Alex Smith through all this too? Here's Alex Smith, who was the starting quarterback for San Francisco at the start of the season, and when he went down, oh no, what are the Niners going to do? Well, they've done pretty well.
Yeah, I agree with Craig. It's a combination of the both. But I think the bigger story is the Falcons not only won last week, but the week before. They blew huge leads. And you can't do that and call yourself a championship team. They've been cursed, I guess you could call it, over the last, since they began in the NFL, but they just can't ever seem to win the big game. And until they do, I'll tell you, they're gonna be known as a team that just keeps choking in the playoffs every year, year after year.
Like the Falcons had great teams in the past, like Andre Rison and dating my days, but Deion Sanders. They had great teams in the past and the best talented team in the NFL back in those days, and they could never win the big game. So now they look at this. They got to one win away from the Super Bowl. Now they know what they have to work on. They have to shore up their defense.
And I guess that's the next step for the Falcons. Like, what next? Like you said, defense. But let's talk about Colin Kaepernick and what he's done. Because you talk about Alex Smith. There was a lot of trepidation when he went down, saying, can this guy come in and do well? Did okay his first few games. You thought, you know what, he's doing a job. They'll bring in Alex Smith, they'll be fine. Then all of a sudden, Jim Harbaugh stuck with Kaepernick, and we're seeing the results, the fruits of the labor, because last year's team that went to the NFC Championship game lost it. Not blaming Alex Smith, but I think Kaepernick was that X factor. Can he do the same thing in the Super Bowl against that Ravens defense?
Yeah, I think he can. I mean, he's already played how many pressure-packed games? He ran for 190 yards against Green Bay. Second year in the league, basically he's a rookie, plays nothing like it. I don't see why, if he didn't have the nerves, being down 17 against Atlanta, he's gonna be great on the big stage come 2 weeks from now in New Orleans. I think he's gonna be tough to stop, but I think the Ravens have a shot.
I think the Niners have a lot of weapons too. Like if they take away his running, he can throw it. If they take away his throwing and his running, they got Gore. So they have a lot of weapons, and their defense is as solid as it is. And is it as good as Baltimore's? We'll find out in a few weeks.
Big signings in the CFL. Interesting news as well. We'll get to the Eskimos first. Releasing Stephen Giles, actually. Surprising move. I don't know if you want to keep him as maybe a backup quarterback. Who knows? I know the quarterback position is one thing that need to shore up. But I see this as more of a symbolic thing because Eric Tillman was the one who brought him in for Ricky Ray. And maybe this was a gesture to get rid of the Eric Tillman era, the aroma, whatever you want to call it. Does that make sense to you guys?
Aroma?
I don't know. Getting rid of the stench of Eric Tillman. According to Ed Hervey and the Eskimos, that's certainly a case to, at least a case in point.
I think that's part of it, probably for sure. They want to get rid of anything that Tillman did, that they're trying to correct his mistakes. But honestly, you guys, have you seen Stephen Giles play the last 5 years in the CFL? I don't think that's all of it. I think they just need to shore up their quarterback position hugely, and he's not the guy for them. I don't know, he's 32, I believe, now. If he hasn't done it yet, he's never gonna. They'd be better off going with some younger guys.
Is it me, or is it hard to find quarterbacks in the CFL? Because here's Stephen Giles, a below-average quarterback, but yet he kept on finding job after job after job, was traded for one of the best quarterbacks in the CFL, or the best right now, because he is the defending Grey Cup champion, and he landed up in Edmonton. Yeah, he's a third stringer at best behind a 40-year-old. 40-plus-year-old, you know? So if you're a third stringer behind a guy that is over 40 years old, I think maybe it's time for Stephen to find a different career.
That's what happened late in the season, too, of course, being behind Matt Nichol and, like you say, the 40-year-old Kerry Joseph.
Is Nichol coming back?
Well, that's going to be interesting. Yeah, that's going to be another thing. That will be, time will tell for the Eskimos. But I want to ask you, I want to bring this up because Adrian McPherson, who's the backup quarterback in Montreal, might actually get some time because considering that the Montreal Alouettes signed Quentin Porter, most likely could be the backup behind Anthony Calvillo. Then they also brought in Arland Bruce, and they also brought in Byron Parker, a defensive back. Good key signings for them, or is it just replacing old guys with more old guys?
Yeah, kind of like with a bit about that because Porter's up in age, Parker's up in age. Bruce, he took a hard hit in Saskatchewan. Guys that age don't recover from that quickly. So it'll be interesting to see. And a lot of changes coming up in Montreal. I know they lost their coach. They could lose their GM before you know it, too. It'll be interesting.
They lost their assistant GM, too. He'll be the new GM for the
I think they're replaced. They're getting older with those signings. I think Bruce might have another good year left in him, but like Greg said, they won't. It's a big question mark after that nasty concussion that he took last year. Portis, again, you're talking about a 30-some-year-old quarterback, 30-year-old quarterback that's never proven himself. And Byron Parker was less than magnificent in BC last year, and he's getting older too.
All right, well, thanks, guys. We're going to take a quick commercial break here. We're going to talk about Wade Redden and his chances of making the top line for the St. Louis Blues coming up.